Hello, ladies and gentlemen of SeemsGoodMagic.com. This is Travis Simulant Sowers, and we are rejoicing for Phantom Sealed has returned. And that gives us the opportunity to do sealed videos again in a nice chunk without spewing too much value, which I think is fantastic, and I'm happy to be back here with another sealed video. In brief, I've done about 20 sealed events with Shadows, and I've found it to have the most disparity between draft and sealed of any set that we've had recently. Kind of similar to how BFZ was, and it's also a very high variance experience, and that there's so many synergy cards that you can end up with all enablers and no payoffs, or all payoffs and no enablers. So you kind of tend to need to look for just individually power cards, unless there's a synergy deck there, which there can be. And then not to mention with all the flip cards and rarities that are going on there, you can end up with a pool that has, double the rares that are playable than a normal pool would. So you need to be able to build a deck that's capable of beating bombs, as well as build a deck that's capable of beating synergy. Like, there's a lot of viable stuff. It's a fun format, but again, the high variance can lead to one individual tournament not doing particularly well, or having a deck that's just amazing and crushing everybody. So it's a very interesting format. Anyway, we'll let this bad boy fill up and fire, and then we'll see you for the build. All right, here we are in build. Get frogged. What's up? All right, so what we want to do here is we're gonna start looking at the rares. We've got 20 minutes, so we've got to go relatively quickly, and we're gonna look at the rares because we care about the rares, and then we're gonna pull down the cards by each color, find the reasons to be each color, and we're looking primarily for power rather than synergy, which is a little bit different than what you're normally doing when you are playing with Shadows. Now, if we have some synergies, like for example this Call of the Bloodline and things that go with it, we'll try to maximize those, but we're primarily interested in what's the good stuff. It's going to be pretty hard not to play this. We'd like to at least play one of these colors and splash it. Could easily be black, because From Under the Floorboards is very good. Engulf the Shore, not really super playable in sealed. Eerie Interlude, kind of garbage anyway. Ruins, kind of a bum rare, but that's alright. We might could use the fixing. And Devil's Playground is fine, not amazing. I have played with it a lot more since the draft we saw on there earlier, and it's just okay. But let's start by pulling down the playables from each color, and then we'll talk about them briefly, say what's a reason to be that color, what's playable in that color. White looks like it's pretty weak, with the exception of a Bound by Moonsilver. Like, the rest of this stuff is fine filler level cards. So hopefully we don't have to play white, and we can just maybe splash a Bound if we need it. Blue looks a little bit deeper. Let's see what we've got going on here. I do think counterspells are playable in sealed, at least the first one is. Catalog's borderline. Yeah, blue is deep, but not really amazing, which is kind of the story of blue in this format. But from a power level standpoint, the reasons we might want to play blue are probably for the Scab, as it's a recursive threat. And I thought I saw a Sleep Paralysis in here. Yeah. Which is very similar to Bound by Moonsilver. You just can't move it around. So you've got to be a little more careful when you fire it off. But it can just handle anything, which is a pretty dang handy thing to have. Black, what have you got for us? Black looks a little funky. Okay, so Black's got From Under the Floorboards, which is a fine 5-mana card. Like, it's not necessarily a reason to go into it, but it's nice. It's got a Compulsion, which is sort of good. It's got an Air of Falconwrath, which can be good, and a Dead Weight, which can come in handy. Some of the ways to lose a game in this format are just with 2/2 flyers killing you. These Pale Riders really want you to be able to discard something to them, either a regular Madness card, like the Twins of Mauer Estate, which really you're not getting a discount, you're just getting, to play 2 spells in a turn, which is fine, or pseudo Madness cards, like Dauntless Cathar is an example of one of those. You can discard it for still effect. Black looks better than the other colors we have, but it's not exceptionally deep right now. We might end up playing like Rotten Heart Ghouls or something like that. A lot of red cards here. Let's see what we've got. Now, there's a reason to play some Madness cards, like Utes with, where's our gal? Air of Falconwrath is pretty damn cool. We'd also be interested in seeing if we have any combos with Call of the Bloodline. It doesn't look like we do yet. I'm starting to think that Convicted Killers might just be playable. Same thing with Senseless Rage. Red's deep. It depends on the strategy we're going with, but like the reasons to be red are Reduced to Ashes, Geist Blast to an extent. Like you'd probably want to have some shenanigans to do with it to want a 3-mana shock. Playground is good. Youths is good. That's one of the synergy things we were talking about that can do a thing. But I'm starting to notice there's a decent amount of Madness cards here, and that may be enough synergy with Call the Bloodline. What I really want with something like this is a Vampire Aristocrat or a Groundskeeper, so we can really go nuts with it. It doesn't look like we've got anything set up like that, but we could still use it to madness out some stuff for shenanigans. So Black-Red is looking interesting. I don't mind Piggies or Wolves in Sealed. I've even played Provision or Equestrian Skill once. I didn't particularly care for it, but there we are. Confront the Unknown's pretty good too. So green has a mediocre but solid base of stuff. It's got some beef if that's what we're looking for. There's none of the marquee cards for green. We're pretty far off from being able to play a green-white deck, so this is essentially a bear. I like Quilled Wolf a lot, as it's a 2/2 for 2, which is kind of what you want on turn 2, and it can also be a threat later, but that's the closest thing we've got to a reason to be green. Although just solid, beefy things are here. And then for our colorless cards, we've got a bunch of nothing, basically, with an Apparatus, a Key. True Faith Sensor goes in most decks, so that's something we'll put over here with the Get Frog and see if we can do. We also don't have any real fixing with green, so it looks like green is a bit too shallow, blue is a bit too not powerful, and white is just garbage except for Bound by Moonsilver, so I'm kind of inclined to see what we could do with red-black. Probably splashing the Get Frog, because again, it's just too powerful not to play. There's a lot of air here, so we'll want to like get some of that out. Like Tormenting Voice doesn't really do anything. It can, but it doesn't always. I sort of don't hate the Magmatic Chasm, Hulking Devil, Stromkirk Mentor plan. We're a little short on dudes with this, but since Call of the Bloodline makes dudes and Devil's Playground makes dudes, I think we're okay there. So our cuts would probably come in here. Let's do a quick look on Madness Enablers and Madness Payoffs. So these are our good Madness Enablers. These are our bad Madness Enablers here. Like you can enable madness with these, but you're not really like getting ahead with it. Our Madness Payoffs are, I'll put our good ones next to it, because I really think the Incorrigible Youths, like this gives us two options. One option to get a turn 3 Incorrigible Youths, one option to get a turn 4 one, which is pretty good. We also get Breakneck Rider, which can finish off a game. We could get turn 3 Twins with the Heir of Falconwrath, or turn 4 Twins with the Call of the Bloodline. These Senseless Rages might do a thing. Like it's a great way to make a 5/5 Skulk. That's kind of stupid. I don't really want to do that, but okay. Tormenting Voice is also kind of one of those bad Madness Enablers. I like one in the deck because you can toss extra lands if you need them. But it looks like this build is really going to focus on whether or not we hit Call of the Bloodline. We're also playing such beautiful cards as Rotten Heart Ghoul, which I guess you can trigger your own shenanigans with. And this really isn't doing much other than being a 4-mana 3/4 to whatever it is. It's doing the thing that it does. The removal's not bad. We've got 2 ways to kill little things, 2 ways to handle a big thing. Generally speaking, I want True Faith Sensor in most of my decks. It's good on the front side of our werewolves. I don't love this little guy, but he's okay. I could see cutting something like 1 Voice, 1 Senseless Rage. Like, this is really only good with the Madness Enablers. Pyrehound isn't fantastic either, but, I mean, you can build a thing. And we're pretty much okay on creatures with this build. Is the mana good enough to splash the Gitrog monster, you ask? Probably not, but I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah, I might even cut something nasty like the Rotten Heart Ghoul, because even though it says we've only got 13 creatures here, we've really got 14 and 15 right here. Pyrehound's another reasonable cut. Like, you have to resolve it for it to do anything. And I could see sort of trying to aggro somebody out with these, sort of holding them. Like, we've got... These guys are really over here if we're going to enable anything with them. I guess Waltz can enable madness too. Like, we've got some shenanigans. I'm just not sitting there great. I think this is a must play. So if you've got to cut one more card out of here, it may just have to be the other Senseless Rage. I could see that doing a thing and, like, flipping that on an Heir to the Night. Like, can you imagine turn 2? You've got a 5/4 dragon. I'm also pretty interested in seeing if we can get enough instants. Like, is there a chance I don't need Magmatic Chasm to finish a game? I always like having one of these in a red deck if I've got enough creatures, but I may not actually need it. It's just kind of a free you win sometimes. Maybe it's just Tormenting Voice. Although it can let you keep hands that you really have no business keeping. Yeah, I like Thorm Under the Floorboard. I feel like this deck is going to really hinge on whether or not we draw a Call to the Bloodline. Let's think about this for a moment. You can see here we've got pieces for a synergy deck and some powerful cards. I almost want to cut that Embry Wolf for a Quilled Wolf. Like, I just don't love that card. Murderous Axe is another 0 mana Madness Enabler, but there's so much bounce in blue. I'm scared to main deck it. Like, I'm aware that it's there. It's a card we might consider. But, like, if we're going to run 3 forests... Yeah, one thing I could consider doing is cutting the Wolf and the Pyrehound and just running the Solitary Hunter. And then we can run 3 forests and a Tormenting Voice and say we'll probably be able to hit that. Because this guy goes kind of nicely with what we're doing. We could even consider, like, Uvenwald Mysteries is the other green card that you might want to play. This leaves us with 14 creatures, which is still a little low. I mean, you could always just run the Pyrehound 2 and cross your fingers on the mana. Or you could run the True Faith Sensor. I think I'm kind of okay with this. Again, we're not really exploring other options. Like, I think this has us playing most of our rares, which is probably good. It has us running, I think, the best removal options we have, with the exception of the 2 Deal With Anything cards. Which, if I had any fixing for those, I'd consider splashing them too. The fact that we've got the Forbidding Ruins means we can probably run this. Like, why am I playing each of these colors? Well, black gives me Call of the Bloodline, which is almost a rare, and we've got some real combo opener potential with the Heir of Falconwrath. Much lesser extent with the Pale Rider. Although discarding something and getting it back with Macabre Waltz later isn't unreasonable. I do kind of want to cut something for this equipment. Like, it's, do I want the explosive potential of Senseless Rage, or do I want True Faith? I think I'd rather have the True Faith Sensor. Like, this does a lot of the same things that Senseless Rage does, but it's reusable. I could see an argument that that's closer than I think it is, and we shouldn't be doing that. All right, we've got 5 minutes left. Let's take a quick look at black-green. Maybe splashing red, maybe not. and make sure I'm not just being crazy here, because there's a chance that I am. So these are the cards that we probably want in that. If we just go straight green, what do we get? We get beef. We get beef. We get plenty of dudes. We get Uvenwald Mysteries, which is pretty cool. And we could consider splashing for Reduced to Ashes, which wouldn't be very difficult. We'd probably still run the True Faith Sensor. We're a little short playables here. Like, we could use Might Beyond Raisin as a combat trick, but we're already running one with Confront the Unknown. This is probably a little better at grinding, but I don't like it. I like the Hunter, I like the Mysteries, but I think the red is just better. Plus it gives us an oops, I win button if we can get enough junk on the board. Alright, let's look one more time. Is this what I want to submit? 12, 13, 14 creatures. 15 if you count this. It's going to have some problems, but I think we're close enough that I've got to just jam this and then kind of decide where we want to go. I really need 3 forests, and I think it's black that we have to cut down on, which is unfortunate because it's going to make this From Under the Floorboards difficult to cast. It's also going to make all of our 2-drops difficult to cast. Maybe we should just do this and accept that the Breakneck Rider is not really likely to come out on turn 3 very often, but it could happen. Because if I don't have 3 forests, we're not going to be able to hit these 2 on time, and I think I need that Solitary Hunter as just one piece of beef to threaten to take over the game. This was an interesting build. I think it kind of had to be green. Excuse me. I think it kind of had to be red-black. And I think you want the Gitrog monster in this deck because that just gives us a powerful finisher. I kind of want to get another land in here too. But we'll make that change depending on whether we're on the play or the draw because we're about to run out of time here. So I'm going to submit this bad boy and see you guys for round 1 in just a moment.